Okay, it's on.
All right, we're sorry about that. The internet is not as good right where we're at today. But I want to say that please share this, come back in, broadcast it for us, help us do that. Again, we're here with the General Overseer of the Church of God, Mountain Assembly, and we are going through interview of kind of his ministry and how he became the General Overseer. So you first felt the call, you said you was how old?
I was 10 years old, 51 years ago.
Okay, 51 years ago, and that was in Chicago?
Chicago, Illinois, where my dad had pioneered the second church in Illinois.
So that was what Pastor E was talking about when he was in Chicago. Him and my grandmother, Sister Walden, was there, so he was 10 years old. And did you preach your first sermon in Chicago, or how did that come about?
My first knowledge of preaching was in Cleveland, Ohio, when my grandpa, my papa, and his picture's right here, he pioneered a church on the west side of Cleveland, and he had heard that I had received a call to preach, and he wanted me to do my first sermon in revival at his church on the west side, and that's where I done it at.
So you was 10 years old then?
10 years old.
And it was a revival, right?
It was a revival. I preached the same sermon every night, and it got less time every night.
So it was on the west side there, near West 58th, right?
No, it was on Denison.
Oh,
That's
Denison.
where he started.
Okay. So you was 10 years old, and then you preached, traveled and evangelized.
For a while, as a child, and preached at the church there, Antioch Church of God in Chicago, and then really started evangelizing more with Pastor Kenny Ellis from Melbourne, Kentucky, one of my very best friends. We went across this country evangelizing when I turned 16.
So kind of like me and Pastor Nick
Yes.
and myself, how we used to travel and sing and preach and do all that. And so you and Pastor Kenny done that.
Yes.
Did you guys preach at the assembly together one year?
There was three of us that preached, Brother Darrell Alexander and Brother Kenny Ellis and myself. When Brother Donnie Hill was youth director, he thought that he would try three young preachers, and we done it here in Jellico.
That was probably one of the first times, wasn't it, that
Yes.
they had done on youth night,
Yes.
and many preachers like that, which we do it quite often now,
Yes.
which is good.
Very good.
I remember when Pastor Kenny Ellis was youth director, he would often let me and Pastor Nick preach together and
Right.
tag team and do that. So anyway, so you when was the first time you pastored a church, and where was it at?
First time I pastored the church, I was intern pastor in Palm Bay, Florida, which is our church in Melbourne. Living Waters Church of God Mountain Assembly, which Pastor Kenny Ellis pastored, and I had served there for a period of a few months as intern, and then and enjoyed my time in Florida. And in the winter time, I often wonder why I left Florida. Especially when I lived in Ohio and in Indiana and those places. But yes, that was the first church I pastored.
Okay, so that was in Melbourne, Florida. Palm Bay, Florida, but they moved
Right.
to Melbourne now. Pastor Kenny Ellis has built
A phenomenal ministry there.
one of our best churches, I'm
Yes.
telling you.
And he built it with not church transfers, but he's built it a solid church. With what he had done there at that church was when the Lord called him, he left a great church in Sydney. But he felt the call to go to Florida and had about 10 people there. And it was not full time. The church he left, Sydney, was full time, but he had a call of God, and he sold life insurance to provide for his family. Well, while he was selling life insurance, he was selling the real eternity life insurance, won people to the Lord, and they started coming to that, and that's how he built his church.
Wow. So that was in Palm Bay, Melbourne. Where'd you go after that?
Well, after that, I went to I went to help Brother Jim Barty in Floral in Cincinnati area.
Floral Avenue?
Yes, as a bus director, and we develop bus routes there over the Rhine in Cincinnati, and really done a lot of good work there. And God really blessed with the bus ministry there, and I still believe in bus ministry. I don't think that bus ministry was ever intended to be a fad. I think it was an extension that God has called us to do. But I was there, served under Jim Barty for a period of 6 months.
Yeah, okay, so that was in Floral Avenue, you were there, and is that when you met Mom?
No, I met your mother at camp.
Okay.
We had camp, but I was persuaded to help Brother Barty when I was dating your mom during that time.
Okay.
So she could spend more time with me.
All right. So you guys got married in 1980, right? 8/8/80.
8/8/80.
Was that so you could remember it easier?
Absolutely, and I've never been in hot water because I forgot anniversary.
So you was 8/8/80, and you guys got married. So when you first got married, where was you at in ministry?
I was serving at Aspinwall Church as I was brought on to helping to run the daycare and do assistant to the pastor there, to Pastor E. And we was there for a period of 2 years.
Okay. And you, so you worked in the daycare there?
Daycare, bus ministry, youth ministry, done all kinds of work. Of course, I worked in the bus ministry as a teenager and really enjoyed the bus ministry.
So that was 1980, and you were in Cleveland. So then after 1980, where did you go for ministry there? Because I know you didn't stay there at Aspinwall.
Well, you was born in 1981, and about a year later, I had an invitation to pastor a church in Clinton, Tennessee, and we accepted. My uncle Jasper Walden was the district man. Asked me what I thought about it, and we came down, preached, and felt the call, and we had great success in Clinton, and we was there for about from 82 to about 87 or 88 in that area, and then we went back to Aspinwall Church.
So you were there 5 years in
5
Clinton, and those I remember some of Clinton time that we were there. Not a whole lot of it, but I remember some of it. I remember remodeling that bottom part
Yes.
of that, and then the church. I remember a lot of things. I remember one time I was Mom was getting up to go to the bathroom or something, to go to the back, and I went to follow her, and you was preaching, and you stopped me right while you was preaching and said, "John, sit down and don't go back there." I was scared to death, so I turned back around, and I never done it again after that. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
I remember some good people from Clinton that we're still friends with today.
Very much so. Yes.
Tammy and some of them that have been true friends. I know we've enjoyed our time there. So you went back to Aspinwall, and at this time you went back to Aspinwall, you started one of the most critical ministries, one of the best ministries we have at our church now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, while we was in Tennessee for that 5-year period, the Lord added to our family Pastor Jeremy, that pastors our church in Brimfield, Ohio, doing a great job there. And then the Lord called us back to Cleveland, and we developed a ministry called the Trailblazer, senior adult ministry, and I believe that was started in 88 or 89. And where we would have once a week have the seniors come in from the church and from the community come and have a time of fellowship. We'd play some games and sing some old songs, and had some really good food and sold a lot. I'll tell you, I've never sold so many hot dogs in all my life to help keep the ministry going.
Chili dogs with coleslaw on them.
Yes, West Virginia hot dogs, coleslaw on them. And we was able to finance the ministry through a lot of our seniors that really pitched in and helped us to make those hot dogs. And many of the people that was in the factories sold them for us. and we delivered them. And those were great years. I enjoyed my time developing the senior adult ministry, the Trailblazer, that Aspinwall Church, which is still going and really growing under the leadership of Pastor E there.
I think it was 1987, if I'm not mistaken, that end of 86,
Could have been.
87, I think, is what, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But that was, that ministry, even today, we go provide them transportation.
Right.
We supply food. We have some great workers, Sister Barbara, Sister Lewis, and some of the great kitchen workers there. They do provide food. I still meet people today that remember you coming and getting them, or selling hot dogs in factories. And,
Yes.
you know, I preached a funeral the other day of a lady that used to bring her mom and to Trailblazers, and she got saved through her mom coming there, and now she's a Sunday school teacher at another church, but they asked me to preach a funeral of a relative they had that I met.
Yes.
So that was pretty neat. So you were in Cleveland for a little while. Then when you went, you was in Cleveland, and then you had another opportunity open for you to do ministry. Explain that a little bit.
Yes. In '89, I believe it was, we had an opportunity from a pastor in Muncie, my uncle Ray, to come and do ministry, to run a Christian school there in Muncie, Indiana. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. After I got there, I found out that, you know, the many things that I was not told that I would be doing, and some of the things that I was told that I would enjoy, I never did do. Matter of fact, my Uncle Ray enticed me. He said, we go fishing once a week here, he said, and you'll enjoy it here. And so when I got there, within 2 weeks, I paid big money for a fishing pole, like $80-90. That may not be
Back
big
then.
money now, but back then. Matter of fact, there's so much money I had to put it on layaway and pay for it a few weeks. And so we stayed there for about 4 years, and never, not one time, did he ever let me use that fishing pole. So I was out all that money with bait, and but as soon as I got there, he started a redecorating or reconstruction type remodeling on the gymnasium that we had and on the church. And I mean to tell you, we worked and we worked. Of course, during the day, I would run the school, which we had over 60 kids in the school there. And even today, we stay in touch with a lot of them. And there was a lot of good ministry. Matter of fact, our headquarters church is pastored by one of the boys that graduated from there. We have several churches in our organization that is pastored, or their wife was a part of the school there, and it really made an effect on our organization. And also found out that when I got there, that I had to be the sports guy. And of course, I was never, I watched some sports, but I found out that I had to be a basketball coach and a volleyball coach. And I knew nothing about basketball except that you had this ball and you throw it in a hoop, you know, did not know. But I learned a lot of stuff in there, and we had a great time with a lot of other Christian schools. And we a lot of great ministry opportunities there. Through the Sound the Alarm, which is Life Point today. Pastor Joe Pruitt pastors the church. And man, it was just a great blessing there. And there, and while we was in Indiana, I had my youngest son, Nathan, which has, you know, developed the ministry Hope Soap of Ohio. And I told my wife, I said, we're not moving to a different state. Every state we've lived in, we had a kid. And I said, 3 states, 3 kids. I said, that's plenty. So we're not going to go to Missouri or California. We're done.
I remember, before I go on, if you have any questions, please message them in. Sister Jalen, do we got any questions so far? So if you got any questions, please put them in, and she'll write them down, and we'll ask them here. But I remember in Muncie some things that I fell in love with. I fell in love with the game of basketball in Muncie. We had a
Yes.
gym in our backyard. had a basketball hoop in the backyard.
Yes.
And I remember a lot of things, but I loved basketball, and I played every day there. Got to learn how to play basketball, but fell in love with, even though they were family, the Landis family, but they were become closer than just family.
Yes.
And even to this day, Sean and Scott and Leah we've had great friendships and close family, and I love them dearly. Anyways, so we get to, you were in Muncie, and you were principal of a school. You were evangelizing some in the summertime.
Yes.
I remember going to Pastor Ralph Johnson's house and a lot of places where you preached
Absolutely.
revivals through the summer. But then where did we go from there?
Well, during the time of helping in toward the end of Muncie, they had elected me to be assistant youth director with Pastor Rick Massengill,
Right.
which we praise the Lord. He had contacted that virus and was in intensive care for many days, but today he is sitting in a regular hospital room and healed. You know,
Yeah.
God has really brought him out. And man, we are overwhelmed and rejoicing with Sister Tammy and the boys, and of course the church and stuff there in Monroe, Michigan. So we done a lot while we was in Muncie too with the youth department during the summer. We spent a lot of time there. But then I received a call to come back to Northeast Ohio to a little community called Brimfield, just outside of Kent, Ohio, by Kent State University. And we went there in '92. And God really blessed. I pastored there for almost 24 years, and was there and really had great ministry, developed bus ministry, developed daycare there,
And school there for a little
school
bit.
there for a while, Christian school. We even helped several churches in the Akron area to develop and to start a daycare center. The Lord allowed us to do that, Streetsboro Church of God there. And I raised my kids there, and the community was great for raising kids. The church was really good. Didn't have a lot of people when we went. Left a good ministry job that I loved, the school, but I had a call of God. And it was time to release the work there at Muncie, Indiana, and go to Brimfield. And we started with a handful of people, and my God has just really blessed over the years at Brimfield Church of God, which is the Hill Church now.
Right. So we had 12 acres there?
We got 11
acres there.
Yeah.
And we lived on the church property, and then that's where I met Angie, and all
Yes.
three of our girls were born in Akron Hospital, and so on. But that was great. So 24 years, you're happy, you're building a church in the Hill there at Brimfield, and we all loved Brimfield, still love Brimfield. Great people. So one August changed your life. What happened?
I was praying one time a few months before that at the church, because we had come to a little struggle there, and asking the Lord for direction, on what needs to be done. And as I was walking through the pews of the church, we had pews then, the Lord spoke to me and said, I'm about to do something, big. And of course, in my heart, I thought the Lord was talking about the church there, because we had done good and, things was well. And in August that of 2014, we had our general conference in Pigeon Forge. And Brother Like, which has done a great job as the mission director, had served 2 terms, and he had let the delegation know that his 3rd term he would not be running. And then, so the floor was open for nomination, and my name was presented, as well as 2 other very distinguished men in this organization. And I got up thinking that I was going to decline, and because I did not want to leave Brimfield. Loved Brimfield. We had great work and things were starting to pick up. And then the Lord told me, brought me back to that time that He had talked to me during that time of prayer. And I said, Lord, I thought that was for the church. He said, well, it is. He said, but it's for you. And so I sat back down and thought, well, if the election goes, because in our organization, we don't think that we run against each other. We think that we're, going toward the will of God. And however God ends it, it is. And so we served, we got elected as mission director. We served as mission director, enjoyed the mission work, always enjoyed mission work, been on the mission field several times. And the call of the Lord was, for the mission field at that time. And we served 4 years as the assistant overseer, international mission director. Been to India, been to Caribbeans, been to Nicaragua, Haiti, and several countries around the world that we had the opportunity to minister in. And the mission department done well and grew. And that's where God had planted me for a season.
And so your last year as mission director was at that time a record of finances
Yes.
that had come in, and churches we've started the organization, but under you, and
Right.
you loved doing that. That was one of your favorite things.
It was absolutely, and one of our countries, Pakistan, just exploded, and so forth. So we had a record-breaking numbers of churches in foreign fields and finances that God provided, and it's still growing. I mean, finances are growing record years under Brother J. Walden, and churches are growing, and we give the Lord honor because in the ministry, we always want to leave it better than what we came into, but we're expecting the next one to take it better than what they came into. And that's just ministry. Should never be a place in our heart for jealousy because one done better than us. Because the Apostle Paul said, we are laborers together.
Right.
We're workers together.
Co-laborers.
Co-laborers. And he says, Apollos, or I planted and Apollos come by and watered. He said, but it's all for the increase for God to give us. And that's what's happening.
So with that, we didn't even just say that. I mean, not only did you take over as mission director, as the rule said, you uprooted, and you and Mom
Absolutely.
moved and got a vacation from all three of your kids and grandkids.
I think we see them as much as we've always seen them. That was a big concern of mine. And of course, my wife, Sharon, when I got elected, she walked in, the delegation had no idea that I was going to, of course, I had no idea, had no intention. My intention was go back home and continue the ministry. And when she walked in, she about fell to the floor when she found out, that she had to move away from her grandbabies and stuff. But, the Lord helped her with it, and, she's enjoying her time, but we enjoy our time with our kids and our grandkids.
So you guys moved to the metropolitan area of Jellico.
All 2,500 residents, if you count the dogs and the cats.
Right. So don't forget, if you have a question, we have a couple that's already in, because we're almost there and almost out of time, but please put your question in, and we can get it. So you moved to Jellico 4 years. You was the international world mission director. We got to travel a lot of places together.
And tried Dad too.
Send containers all over the world. Done all kinds of ministry. Some wonderful works. We got almost whole districts under Pastor Jamie Couch there at the Foothill District, and Brother Pugh, and where Matt Griggs is, and H.E., and
Absolutely.
Of course, if I mention names, we'll get in trouble. But a whole lot of things that we know and we've seen. But then after that, what happened? You came. You was mission director, and then the overseer could not.
Brother Jay Walden had served his his
Term.
terms, his tenures that he could serve. And so the call was for me to serve, and I could have stayed in missions, but I felt like the Lord was leading me to serve beside on the executive board, and we did about a year and a half ago. We'll be in our 2 years, our one term, which is 2 years, and so we served as overseer, as a bishop, and a lot of good things have happened. Added new churches to our organization, and God has really blessed in many different ways. Added training for our ministers. We've developed the ministers training that we do a couple times a year, one in the north and one in the south, and a lot of great things, you know. And we've started our prayer initiative program. Brother Bobby Bond in Michigan is running that, our district overseer. Brother Tim Bartee runs our Christian education, which is the training for our ministers, and that has really went far better than I've ever thought it would do. And so, because I believe that training is important, even the Apostle Paul talks about, you know, training.
And then you've done the northern and southern camp meeting, old-fashioned
Yes.
camp meeting, and
We've developed
last
those.
year you guys raised how much for the National Youth Department through those meetings?
Last year we raised $6,000, $7,000 to help and this year we raised several thousands of dollars for our ministers training, and one year we raised $10,000 for our mission department for
Right.
one of those rallies and stuff.
So you just different areas each year that you
Right.
pick to use and choose for
Absolutely.
that. So that's great. So then you're here now, and you've been in Jellico for 6 years now.
Almost 6 years,
Almost
yes.
6 years, and we're here in, like, again, in the elders room, and right before we end, we'll show you the hall that has the overseers and mission directors pictures on it. But so we just thought, since we had a few minutes, we wanted to interview our bishop, our general overseer, kind of go through some things. We're going to be doing the bishop's broadcast, you know, once a week. Next week, we're going to interview the rest of our leaders every night, and then after that, it'll just be once a week on Thursdays. But we have a couple questions that's come in, and then we know we had to do this in the afternoon instead of the evening. But what's one of the questions?
When did you know that you were called into the ministry?
I knew I was called into the ministry really before the age of 10, but I accepted the call at the age of 10, and being raised in a pastor's home as I have been, and my heart has always been toward ministry. My favorite nephew preacher is the only nephew preacher.
I'll say, who other nephew you got to preach?
And let me say, Pastor Doug is doing an outstanding job there in Ferguson. I'm just waiting for another invitation to come and preach.
Okay.
That's a hint.
Okay, can you tell us how many churches the CGMA has?
We have about 110 churches in the States, and we have over about 900, I think the last count is 980 in the foreign fields. That covers Africa, India, Pakistan, the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and about 980 I think is what we have in the foreign field.
So I have a lot of pastor friends that watch this and will go back and watch this. I know they're working right now or not been able to, but they often ask me about the Church of God Mountain Assembly. They ask, how do we be a part? Do you guys, can you take a pastor out yourself, put one in, or, how does it work? Or what would they have to do if they wanted to find out more about our fellowship that we have? And you explain to it, even though we are a Church of God Mountain Assembly, but how we are a fellowship, if you want to explain that to them.
Well, our churches are congregationally run. We're likened into a fellowship, even though we're registered as a denomination, and we are a 501c3 corporation, nonprofit, and to receive information on how to be a part, there's several ways you could totally be involved. 100%. All you have to do is to get on mycgma.com and put a comment in there, and we would get in touch with you. Or if you're not wanting to be totally, but you want to be involved in our mission program or our youth program or our ministers training, we're open to that, because we're part of developing the kingdom of God, and we invite you to be a part of this fellowship, because we're part of the body of Christ, and we have certain district men. Whenever we get requests, that we contact the district men, and they will contact you and kind of invite you to be a part of the ministry. We're a great organization, Pentecostal organization, and we love the Lord with all of our heart.
So they can, if they want, you can message right in the messenger here to my thing, and then I will forward it to Dad here, and then he'll get it out. We have most of all of our districts have youth rallies and fellowship meetings. Our district, if you're in Northeast Ohio, that's where a lot of my connections are. Once every other month, the pastors meet and have dinner. We just have a time of fellowship, and then on the off months, we have youth rallies where we have church services, and then we take a break June, July, and August, and we have youth camps that we open it up to everybody. It just don't have to be ours, but age groups. Our national youth director, if you're interested in our youth camp, we're one of the cheapest youth camps around. If the younger camp is $80 for the week, the middle camp is $90, and then the teen camp's $100. And that includes 3 meals and your stay there.
Yes.
And so you don't have to be just part of us. If you want to know about our youth camp, I can send Pastor Scott your information, and he would be glad for your kids to come. It'll be an experience they've never had before. It'll be awesome. We have a beautiful 40-acre campground that we love with all our heart. And so if you would like to do that, any information, you can see us about it. We're not, a lot of organizations just want your money. We want your fellowship, and we want to be able to be an asset to you.
Right, and others want your property. We're not in the real estate business.
Right.
We're in the fellowship and growing the kingdom of God. And who knows? You send your child to our camp, may end up like me and my wife. That's where we met 40 years ago. And the love is still growing, and ministry from our family is phenomenal. All 3 of my boys involved in some type of ministry, whether it's pastoring or feeding the hungry, or of course they all feed the hungry, but have different type of ministry that God has given them.
All right, you got some more questions?
Yes. Besides your father, who is or was one of your greatest mentors in the ministry?
Besides my dad?
Yeah.
Probably, I would have to say my Uncle Ray has been my greatest mentor. I got to work with him, and of course, and I've had a lot of good influence in my life. All of my uncles have influenced my life. But when we're talking about mentors, we're talking about people that you work with every day, every week, that imparts things into your life. And so probably if we're talking about mentors, my Uncle Ray Landis has been probably my greatest mentor.
Okay, a pastor asked, how do you think that this pandemic will affect the church body as a whole going forward? Do you think it will change any dynamics of the church?
I believe that the dynamic that it'll change is it'll get us out of our comfort zone. I believe that the church is going to be better because of it. Matter of fact, I read a statistic the other day that says the effect that this virus has had on people as far as the spiritual, what we call the spiritual, the with Jesus Christ, and that is increased by over 40%. And so with those numbers, and the way that it'll affect us is by the way we respond to that, and by the way that we are responding to what's happening. We could say, they're shutting us down. Our hands are tied. No, they're not shutting you down. You may have to find a different avenue, but the work of God will never be shut down. We may have to find different ways, get out of our box or our comfort zone. But the gospel of Jesus Christ is went through the fire, it went through the lion's den. I mean, it went through a time that people thought they'd never, and the same way it is today. It will make the church stronger because the pastors will be stronger. And your church will follow the pastor in every avenue, will follow the pastor. So I think it'll help the church. And I think this is a time to develop our discipleship program. Because if all we're interested in is getting people saved and not discipling them, we're not doing much, but we have to put up a discipleship program. And I think that's one of the big dynamics that will be changed.
I had a pastor ask me the other day, there in Cleveland, and he pastors a fairly large church, and he called me and he said that he asked me about what do I think that's going to happen and all that. And one of the things that the Lord really spoke to me was when people go through a troubling time or a pandemic like we're going through, it always puts us on our knees, out of our comfort zone. It's just like a mom that has a baby that's really sick, the firstborn. I'll give them to you. I'll give her to you. I'll never miss a church service. I'll serve you. I'll bring my family to church. Just save my baby.
Right.
Through a panic always draws us to naturally what we think is God. But one thing that the Lord really spoke to me the other day about that, and I was talking with this particular pastor, is that I really think what's going to help the church is not exactly what we're doing during the pandemic, but I think it's what we're going to do after.
Absolutely.
Instead of just, saying, oh, well, which it is, it's pushing us out and it's good. But I think that a lot of times when things get back to normal, they should never get back to normal for us. I think that it shouldn't stop us from having parking lot church every once in a while, or stopping us from trying to find ways to feed our community. And a lot of times people promise, I say this a lot of times, and people always, I say this, I say, the Bible says it's better to not make a vow than to make a vow and break that vow.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times when you're in trouble, everybody says, well, I'm going to do this. I promise, Lord, if you get my church through this, or you get through this, even on Wheel of Fortune, if you get a vow, it costs you more than a regular thing. And so I think that if the church will continue to do what it's doing during panic mode, I honestly think that the church this will be the third great awakening that will take us to the coming of the Lord. But I think that that it'll take pastors not saying, okay, now it's over, let's just go back to church, let's not do Facebook, let's not do online giving. They're not as hungry as they were before. It's not as desperate for me to pray and fast that God gets us through this. In basketball, you taught me more than anything is that when I shoot, my shot depends on my follow through. And I think that the church, if they're going to excel, they've got to follow through even after it's over.
And I think the key to this is that we've got to realize as pastors, that we cannot do this by ourselves, but we have to train our people in the church. We have to develop them in ministry with discipling people, because we will burn out trying to keep up with what God is giving us. And sometimes God don't give us what we think we deserve or what we need, is because we haven't prepared for that. And I think now's the time to start training your leaders, key people in your church, to take this forward, because you cannot take it forward by yourself. And so I think we need to concentrate on training and mentoring our people for the growth that God is going to give us. God will not give us more than we can handle, and that is with church growth too. If you're not prepared, God's not going to sink the ship. Right. We have to be prepared for it.
So you mentioned that you had 3 sons. We're getting ready to close with this. We don't got no more questions, right?
No.
So you said you had 3 sons, but you had 2 adopted sons too. Which
absolutely.
Pastor Nick and Pastor Doug. And I've always, Grandpa Walden, my grandpa said that his dad thought that Brother Connor Prophet in Mooneyham was their son.
Right.
He said he was.
Absolutely. And since then I've adopted a couple of others. Brother Zach Petrie, and Marco, really investing, and Brother Matt Grode that helps Pastor Jeremy there. I've adopted them as my spiritual sons and others, you know, but those I've spent a lot of time with mentoring.
So I'm going to have Jalen, we're going to try to do this without getting you sick. I'm going to have Jalen take the camera in here and show you the wall of the general overseers and the little mission directors. Give them a little tour of the office here. So this is the Hall of Fame here. But our general overseers here from Andrew Silcox and Bryant and Four, J.H. Parks, and on down through there. Is that Luther Gibson, J.H. Bryant?
Luther Gibson was our Papa Walden's pastor when he got saved.
Yep. Here in Jellico. And then there's Ira Moses. And then it goes down. This ain't in order right here, but this is Pastor Fred Cornelius, Pastor Lonnie Like, Pastor Cecil Johnson, Pastor Jasper Walden. Look how skinny Pastor Ken Massengill was there. Pastor Clayton Lawson, Reverend Jerome Walden, Pastor Jerome Walden, which I worked with him, and he was a former pastor of there. We put a picture of him up at Aspinwall Church there. Reverend C.B. Ellis, Pastor Donnie Hill, Reverend J. Walden, and then the current general overseer now. And then over here is the assistant general overseers, which is a lot of repeats of mission directors, but you can see all the mission directors and Northern Conference overseers there, all the way down to Jim Cox, who just passed away this last week. We've been praying for him and his family, and then on. All right, we thank you for tuning in. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on the Bishop's Broadcast.
God bless.